Hello everyone. It's been a while. It's been busy. There's so much going on. Long story short, we're moving, packing. My toddler's getting into literally everything. And I'm doing a certification course, a teaching certification course. And I'm sitting in the stroller right now. Or I guess leaning on it, I should say. I don't know. Yeah. We have chairs, if you're wondering, but they're inside and I don't really feel like dragging them out. My toddler is awake, but she's not making a lot of noise, so like she's in her crib, she's just kind of like babbling. So I decided to just sneak out of the patio real quick and do this before I get her up from her nap. So the comprehension approach. So this approach, okay, I'm going to introduce the topic first before I jump right into it. So in my certification course, we learned about 8 different kind of teaching approaches that have come along in like past century and a half. And that's kind of like a historical thing that we did, and that so like those teaching approaches were honestly heavily reading, grammar, communication. So it wasn't just for language; it could also be applied to different kinds of teaching. And the one that caught my attention the most was the comprehension approach. So that approach came along in the 1990s, I think, where communication was a lot more important in the classroom, but also they did like a lot of studies regarding how best to teach people a language, and they adapted a lot of what like baby and infancy learning, like how they learned languages, and I tried to apply it in a classroom setting for, I don't know, kids, youth, adults, you know. And I wanted to kind of discuss the pros and cons of it, because this approach, and when they started talking about it, immediately clicked with me. A lot of parents do this approach. Some teachers nowadays in school settings do this approach. So I found it the most interesting one that I kind of have a lot of thoughts on, and I wanted to talk about because I think it'll be helpful in your decision making regarding how to teach your kids like a language, basically, or you know, how to introduce them to it. So the comprehension approach, the issue with it is that it says people acquire language like babies do. You know, you have a silent period where babies don't talk, and then eventually they start to reproduce a lot of words. And that's one of the approaches. And another one is target language only. So with babies specifically, if you focus on the target language or the target languages that you want to teach them and put a specific amount of time only in that target language. So even if hypothetically you want your child to learn, let's say, something crazy like 4 languages or 5 languages, if you bring a person who's fluent in only those languages and then you give it to that child, you have them only speaking to them in it, that's target language only, right? So in the classrooms, how they adapted it was that a teacher would not allow students who, so for example, a lot of like ESL classrooms now, they have a lot of Spanish-speaking students, understandably, Chinese, just different, you know, so many different kinds of groups. I never had any other Arabs really in my classroom, so I never went through that, but a lot of students struggle with staying in English because they have their friends who speak their language and they just want to speak them in that language. So if a teacher cares enough, they usually stop it and they're like, no, we're doing English only, or we're doing French only, or we're doing Spanish only, you know, in the classroom, whichever target language you want to focus on. So the question goes, do you want to do that with your kids? The fact of the matter is, I think it works very, very well for kids who are probably under 5th grade, maybe. Eventually, it becomes an issue because as children get older, they develop more thinking skills and critical thinking, and they want to argue with you about why they don't want to do it, or sometimes it's too much pressure on them. So I've honestly experienced all of these sorts of things. So focusing for like about 6 to 8 hours a day, usually 8 hours, on Arabic only with my toddler works really, really well. It's been like this since she was born, and we switched to English usually after Ryan gets off work. And I have kind of like that accomplishment of like, okay, we did the target language in Arabic only, and now, we can relax a little bit. Or I can relax a little bit, I should say, because she's not really doing much of that. She's just like, listening to me. And that's worked so well, honestly. But if you are in a classroom setting where your students are older, that could be an issue, because sometimes it really might help them to translate a word in their language, so they can maybe ask their friends. So currently I'm tutoring an older lady who specifically told the program tutoring under that she will not be under a teacher who does not speak Arabic. And so they had a hard time finding her one until I came along, because I haven't been in with the program for a long time. I've only been with them for like a year and a half now. And they're like, she specifically wants that. What do you think about helping in that way? And I understood that this lady's older. She's very comfortable in her own language, and learning a new language is honestly a lot of pressure for her. So I was like, okay, that's fine, as long as my goal was to teach her English. So I started out the course with making her comfortable, speaking in Arabic a lot, that kind of thing. And then slowly I progressively started making stricter rules. And she would get used to that. But if she's really struggling with something, I'm going to translate it, So that makes sense for that context, to not do target language only. But if you're doing it with little kids, it's honestly, they probably will learn better just for you to do. Because they're not, like, you have to think about it developmentally speaking, okay? A baby or a toddler or even a preschooler, whatever, they're not going to stand there and ask you to translate something, okay? They're just going to take it, But an older child in middle school, high school, they want to be, like, they're going to be a little bit stubborn about it. And then you can make your decision. And that's where you have to feel it out. Because a lot of this is just feeling it out. Where you have to say, okay, should I lean in and translate? And that can get a little bit complicated. If the child's having a lot of pressure put on them to learn a language, I would definitely help with translation, but I would always make it my goal to go back to the target language. For me personally, I do evaluate still. Even though my baby's, under 2 and all that, I do evaluate at the end of the day, okay, were we in the target language enough? Do we need to make up for it, or do we need to do better tomorrow? I evaluate that almost every day in my head, It's not something I sit down and write about. So, yeah, I just hope this has been helpful for you guys. I tried to make it, like under 10 minutes, and it's only been 8, so it's fine. But if you have any questions, please comment below. And this approach, thinking about this approach can really help you figure out, like, how you want to teach the language. Because there really isn't, just one way, There are easier ways and all that, but you end up having to figure out which way works for you. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.